Welcome back, brothers and sisters. Today we're going over all the buffs, nerfs, and hidden changes that genuinely surprised me when we were testing them all out on stream. And the entire thing was honestly a breath of fresh air when it came to playing the first real update for Space Marine 2, because so many games that we've been playing have just nuked themselves on their first update for no reason. And this honestly felt pretty good across the board. I'll also be summarizing the patch notes and the hidden changes as we go through them. But for now, we're lighting this off with the big elephant in the room that I want to bring up because it seems to be happening on every game that gets even one buff. And it's from the game is too easy now crowd. Well, I have a little bit of a problem with this, and that's that the game was always too easy. The problem before was, though, that we had to install a Droidica organ and spam roll to stay alive, which looked as stupid as it was to play, and it was a garbage gameplay loop. Now the game feels way better to play, and you don't have to, like, Autobots roll out every mission just to feel like you won't instantly die every 5 seconds, and it's crazy to me to think that people thought that it was, like, that was a remotely okay gameplay loop. And the good part about this patch is that it set the stage for the harder difficulty that's going to be coming. Lethal difficulty is going to be coming out. Ruthless isn't the, like, cap for this game. So what can happen is an absurd amount of enemies can be spawned on the Swarm engine, and this set that up to be possible. So that's something to look forward to in the future. But I also saw the same people outraged at the nerfs and got really upset over Melta fun overhealing because it got absolutely gutted. Now, I'm no rocket surgeon, but adding all that HP up made me feel pretty good, and the Melta guns are just fine. They're still the new weapon that you can just face roll with. You honestly don't need the overhealing anymore with all the changes, and one of the big ones is Medk stims. You just have to pop it at the right time, and it snaps all that contested HP back, plus more healing, and it puts more of an emphasis on using tools at the right time. But they also changed the way armor worked to be way more effective across the board. Enemies took a stack of nerfs at the same time to make them deal less damage to armor and just deal less damage in general with less accuracy. And the biggest change that I noticed immediately was the flesh borer nerfs. The ranged enemies also had their accuracy reduced if you're in melee, and that makes it a lot more cinematic with shots flying over you, and not having your HP just completely stripped while brawling feels good. But one of the hidden changes I noticed was the flesh borer warriors are shooting way less shots than they were before, and they're way less aggressive with it. The big positive here is being able to have an epic melee battle that turned the game into more of an armor management system that feels a lot better to play through. And like the power fantasy of being OP in melee is half there. The actual attacks still feel pretty mediocre on a lot of weapons, but the parry system just lets you delete everything around you while regenning armor, and it's a lot more fun to play than it was before because I don't feel like I'm constantly having this health disparity issue. But while we're talking about enemy nerfs, they reduced the amount of enemies we're seeing versus Chaos on the Swarm engine, which did feel really weird. I want to kill thousands of enemies on this game, kind of like we do in World War Z, but we're really not seeing that here. So I think the chaff needs to be increased, not decreased, especially with the new mechanics, but I'm also assuming they just played it safe to prepare for the new difficulty. Obviously, we have to wait and see still. I'm still in the boat, though, that there should be only one Lash Whip warrior or one Warp Flamer active at a time, because these enemies are way too oppressive with their AoE spam. Only the main target can see it. Like, I could see if everybody could see the orange attack that's going to hit all of them, that would be fine, but only the main target can see it, and that sucks. Also, last time I talked about this, some people said there doesn't need to be cooldowns of Majora's enemy orange attacks. Absolutely there does, because this guy spamming 3 attacks back to back, the 0.01 second I engagement melee with a dash attack is so oppressive that it makes the game not fun to play as melee. You're always just shooting, or you're always just waiting if you're trying to engage him in melee. If I hit you with a Thunder Hammer or a Power Fist, you should be waiting, not me. So they need to add an internal cooldown to stuff like this so they don't get spammed off. And they also said they tweaked the teleport mechanic on the Rubric Marines, but this gameplay loop of engaging in melee and it's still teleporting away feels like my time is being completely wasted. You have no reward for closing the gap on enemies that deal a ton of range damage, and these guys should deal a ton of range damage because they have the cursed super bolters, but in my opinion, they shouldn't be able to teleport or use big skills like an AoE fire explosion unless a sorcerer is on the field, so that way it feels good as a gameplay mechanic. These guys are supposed to be slower when there is no sorcerer, so that way it hits the lore while giving you a massive incentive to go kill the guy that supercharges his homies. You probably won't understand how annoying this mechanic is to deal with until you play like Assault or Vanguard, because when I played Tactical and Heavy, I just didn't care about it at all. Like, it didn't matter. I just shot them to death. But the teleport, when you're trying to melee them, genuinely makes it just feel like a complete waste of time to close the gap at all. And they do still teleport behind you and kick you or insta-shoot you, which feels stupid to play against, honestly. If they reined in the spam on Rubric Marines that are literally just made of dust until they got juiced by magic, I think Chaos would feel way better to play against and be able to scale in difficulty properly. Outside of that, though, they are substantially easier to kill, and normal attack-wise, they do feel less oppressive when you're just fighting them normally. If you're just shooting at them, again, you probably don't care at all because they stop mattering altogether. It's just when you try and fight them in melee. And Mr. Shield thankfully doesn't feel like you're punching a dreadnought anymore, so that's great too. Now, the best enemy change was making Neurothropes less tanky. It feels way more fair now, and not just in like the bullets to bunch department, but the AoE glyphs on the ground felt a lot more forgiving, and I wasn't really getting hit like super far away from them like I used to. It seems like they reined that in without saying anything as well, so that's another good hidden change. But the Carnifex going sicko mode was not a hidden change. They actually made it feel really dangerous because as soon as it roars and the eyes go red, it goes crazy. The first time we fought the new version of it, we got smoked because we weren't ready for it. And I really like that because it made me feel like it's what I imagined a Carnifex would be doing. It's supposed to be really powerful and strong, and like I kind of get that vibe now. The only issue I had was that sometimes when you perfect dodged it, it wasn't proccing a gun strike, so that felt bad when it happened, but it might have also been server lag because there was times where I wasn't even getting animation for an attack and just took a massive hit of damage. So I don't know if anyone else was having those problems, but that feels really bad too. You also can't block or parry things if they're on a slight elevation, so that needs attention because it already makes oppressive enemies feel even worse. And I thought they would be looking at enemy HP and bolt guns this update, but I guess that got left out for the next one because the two buffs we got here were the heavy plasma and the power fist. Now the heavy plasma just feels amazing. You just delete everything on the screen with a full charge, and it's pretty hilarious to lob the shots off. So I think the trade-off of shooting slower with the arc is actually okay now, whereas I didn't like it before, and it's just because you can shoot so many times with it. Now, the Power Fist is something I tested pretty in depth, and it feels pretty good, but it still has some serious problems. When we look at the damage increase, I can beat down Rubric Marines really fast, and in general, the regular chaff clear feels pretty good, mainly because of the parry changes, but the Power Fist raw damage is still very weird. So you end up in the old meta of light weaving, and it just ends up as a gunstrike enabler like before, like nothing really changed in the playstyle. It also has some bug talents that just do nothing. The increased range is not noticeable to any capacity, and when we use the ground pound, well, it's honestly pathetic. While they looked at the damage, they really needed to go take a look at the talents that do nothing, and they need to make them do what they advertise. There's a lot of talents in the game that just flat out don't work, so I'm still making a list for that, but if you notice anything that's just flat out broken and not working, please just let me know in the comments so I can go test it. That way I can include it in the next feedback, so that way it can get attention, these things can get fixed. The jump pack on Assault also still feels kind of weird, so it needs another pass, and I think what mainly needs to happen with this more than anything is on the Ruthless difficulty, the dodge window reduction needs to be removed from the game. I think that that's just bad altogether. Like, that's a weird difficulty slider, and I think it's something that makes the jump pack feel really bad when you're trying to use its best talents when you have just a little bit too high of ping. Like, it's something that only people with a really low ping are going to be able to take advantage of, and I think that's just ridiculous. And I think across the board, that shouldn't even have been a modifier in the first place. But one of the good new things that got added was the Sparring Arena, and originally I thought that it was going to be pretty mid, but it was insanely fun. The waiting area to just blast with your friends feels really good. The other thing that it made me like really excited for in the future is hopefully getting like a training room where we could have one of every enemy so we could test breakpoints, probably something close to Dark Tides with all the different enemies, but also adding like PvP training dummies or something would be really cool. That way you could just test everything out and see like what you need to do. And I hope that's something we can get them to add in the future. So my overall final thoughts and opinions about this patch are that it's a lot more fun and way less oppressive than the last update. It obviously has its problems, and it's important that we bring attention to these negatives because it's constructive criticism that will improve the long-term health of the game. It's not about putting everything on blast because it sucks, because this game has a lot of potential to be a lot more fun. And it's so close. Like, the changes we're talking about aren't these massive, crazy changes that would completely derail the game. They're things that would just make it feel so much better to play. Now, I still have my hang-ups with a lot of the Chaos enemy mechanics and the Lash Root Warriors, but most importantly, I want to see what the Swarm engine can do, and I want to be zerged by thousands of enemies every mission. I want to feel like I'm being worn down over time by hordes, because that's what this is supposed to be. But it just isn't unless you wait around for enemies to show up with the wave timer. So I really want them to take a look at that for the next patch and start ramping the spawns up for chaff, because that's what makes these kind of games fun and challenging. Forcing a mistake after killing thousands of enemies feels good, and I hope that's where they end up with this. So let me know what you think so far. I know that everybody has mixed opinions about this right now, but I think the long-term health of the game was staged correctly for the next difficulty. And if you want to make sure your voice is getting heard when we do feedback, make sure you join my community Discord. That's where I announce all my streams. It is just an open conversation to basically like talk about everything about the game, specifically when we're doing that for whatever game we're doing. And again, everybody can critique whatever you're saying, and a lot of my ideas get torn apart. It is what it is. I'm wrong about a lot of stuff, but together we usually end up coming to the right conclusion. So hopefully we can get there together again, and hopefully the future of Space Marine 2 keeps getting better. But that's gonna be all for now. I wish you guys the best of luck out there.